Yep, sure. So this is Carmen Wilmore. I'm an extension educator for the University of Idaho located in Lincoln County. I'm also the other Idaho State co-coordinator for SARE with Kate. So if you have questions regarding SARE, certainly send them my way as well. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about hay sampling techniques and equipment. I feel like hay sampling is a pretty common request in our county extension offices. I know I get a few requests every year, either to go out and sample some stacks of hay or for people to borrow our equipment. So I'll talk a little bit about that and what probes I use and kind of the pros and cons of those. Let's see if I can get my slides to advance. Okay, there we go. So the first thing when you're going to go out to sample hay is you obviously have to identify a lot of hay. So a lot of hay would be the single cutting from the same field of the same variety. And so this would be, your first cutting versus second, third, fourth cutting, So you're only going to sample hay that was harvested within a 48-hour period and consider that one lot of hay. I've had some people that, they might cut half the field and then decide they want to wait and then cut the other half of the field a couple days later. And I usually encourage them to still test those separately because a lot can happen, especially in those last few days of growing that may change the plant maturity. So they often will actually test, with different values. So it's important to kind of use that 48-hour period as a good gauge of what is a lot of hay. The forage to be the same plant maturity and have similar amounts of weeds, rain damage, or any preservative treatment. So this is really important not to cherry pick when you're sampling hay. And I always have that discussion with people when I lend out my tools as well to make sure that they're going to sample every other bale or every third bale and not just go and sample the good bales or the bad bales. The cows are going to eat it regardless. So you need to know what's out there. And then obviously have those different lots should be sampled separately with a separate analysis run for each one. And most hay testing that a lot of people do, they're just looking for protein, energy, things like that. And so they're not real costly for, running 2 or 3 different lots of hay for your different cuttings. So the next thing is when to sample. You should be collecting samples as close to the time of feeding or sale as possible. So this is usually done in the fall. I definitely have the most requests for my sampling probes or to go out and test, in October, November, as those are the times of year that people are getting ready to start feeding or selling hay as well. So the sampling should be done immediately before feeding, and this can account for any heating or weather losses that have occurred during storage. So if the hay is left untarped, that can obviously change a little bit of the feed value associated with that, especially if it's left untarped for, a year or 2 before being fed. That can pretty significantly change the feed value of that hay. So the next thing that I'm going to spend most of the time talking about today is choosing your sampling probe. So probes should penetrate 12 to 18 inches and be 3/8 to 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Another important thing is they should not have an angled tip on them because this can push some of the sample to the side and kind of create an unrepresentative sample. So it might select for more fine particles, which may increase the protein value of your hay, or it may actually select for more of the stemmy parts of your plant, which is going to decrease that. So that's an important thing to not have an angled tip. And they also should be sharpened so that they're cutting very cleanly through the bale so that they're not kind of like a rough edge and doing a really rough cut on the stems and leaves. And then you can pick up probes. Obviously, we know this from your extension offices, NRCS, and laboratories. I know in my area, I have 2 or 3 in my office. And I also have a checkout system, so they give me their phone number. So if they're not returned within a week, I can call them and get them to bring it back or go get it if I have to. Because I certainly have had some walk off that were not returned. So that's another important thing to make sure to label your probe with your office and your phone number. And then if someone's going to pick it up and use it, make sure that you have a way to contact them and get it back. And then another resource, I'm going to see if this link will work, that is really helpful is this foragetesting.org website. I don't know if you guys are seeing this. Maybe I'll do a new share.
Yeah, we can't see it. Thanks.
Okay, let me pull this up. Okay, are you guys seeing the foragetesting.org now?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is an awesome resource. There's a lot more on here than what I'm going to talk about, but if you're interested, you can be certified as a forage tester. So Glenn kind of introduced me to this before he retired, but on here, you can actually take a test, I think, if it's on this one. Yeah, so there's the proficiency certification program and things like that, that shows that you have been trained on how to sample hay. And I actually haven't taken that test yet. I need to, but I know it's even just a good refresher on all of the different kind of things that are important with testing hay that you should be thinking about when you're going out and helping people get samples. So that's a really good resource. This whole website's really good for all of that. And then on here, there should be, if I go back to it, yep, so the listing of hay probes. So on here, this is a list of kind of approved hay probes by the National Forage Testing Association. And so there's different types. There's the drill types that you connect to a hand drill that pushes it through the bale. And then there's just the push types. And I actually prefer the push types. I have loaned out my push drill a lot more than the one that you have to attach to a hand, you know, like a hand drill. And people really, really like it because you just kind of have to use your body weight to push it in the bale. But I feel like even with the drill type, you still have to use your body weight to push that into the bale. So the one that I prefer is the Sierra Hay Probe. This is the one that I will be sending out to those that have requested them. It's super portable. It's easy. You can throw it in your bag if you have to. And it does the job. So I'll just pull up their website. Hope you guys are still seeing this.
Yes, we are.
Yep. So this is their website. Order more. They're also pretty cost effective. They're not real expensive. So if you need a couple in your office, you can get more than one and not be using your whole budget. So I will go back to my PowerPoint. Hopefully. Okay. So again, they should penetrate that 12 to 18 inches to get a good cross section of your hay bales. So this is just a picture. So this is the push type drill push type probe that I have on the left-hand side of the screen. It has kind of a pretty large diameter handle, and that's where I usually attach my Ziploc bag, because what happens is as you push that into the bale, it comes through the probe and then it kind of releases out into that handle. So if you don't have anything on the handle to capture it, it might fall on the ground and, you know, then you miss out on that sample. So I usually put the bag over the handle. I take a rubber band and attach it on there. And then in between each bale, I'll push the sample through the probe with the, I guess it's like a stylus or something like that. So I'll push that through so it goes into the bag and it's not jamming up the probe. Because otherwise, when you go into your next bale, it will push it through, but sometimes that makes it harder to push into the next bale. So I always push it through with the probe kind of center between each sample. And then there's the drill type on the right-hand side showing there. You attach the drill to the probe that goes into the bale, and then after you pull it out of the bale, you have to push that into your bag in between each sample. So, and I'll have a video of that later. So the next thing is where to sample on the bales. So samples should only be taken from the end of rectangle bales between the strings, so you get a good cross section of material, not on kind of the end, I guess, I don't know, not on the other end of the bale. It needs to be able to go through the bale, so you're getting multiple cross sections of each flake, not where you'd just be going through and getting one sample out of one flake of hay, is the way that I always try and explain it to people. And then on round bales, again, you want to sample on the rounded side where the strings and wrapping are. And depending on how the strings are wrapping are, you're going to push those to the side and then insert at a 90-degree angle. So again, so you're getting a good cross section of as many kind of flakes as possible out of that bale. Because the point is you want to get, you don't want to, you want to sample as much of the bale as possible without getting just one area of the bale. And that's, I always try and explain that to people and show them before they leave my office if they haven't taken hay samples before, which for most large farmers and ranchers, they kind of understand the basics, but some people that come in and have just bought, one truckload of hay and they want to know what it is, it's important to explain all of those things to them and how many bales to sample so that they're getting a good amount of sample for what they need. So that leads into this next slide. So you should sample at least 20 bales from each lot in different areas of the stack. And usually I ask people how big their stack is and then, tell them to go every other bale or every third bale. They should have about half a pound of material when all samples are collected. And you can take more samples from more bales if you're concerned about any moldy or hot hay so that you actually get that representative in your sample, but you don't want to necessarily go through and make sure you're getting hot or moldy bales sampled. It's just important if you're concerned about that to get part of that into your sample. And don't avoid those moldy bales for a composite sample because they're still going to be part of what's fed. So if it's going to be fed, you want to pick that up in your sample as well. If it's something where you just have a few bales that got moldy from being on the top of the stack or something like that, and you can just pull those off and not feed them, then you can do that and then continue sampling. But it's just something to be aware of. So when you submit your samples, all samples from the same lot should be composited into one well-sealed plastic bag. That bag, no matter when it's sampled and submitted, it needs to be protected from heat, moisture, and excess sun because all three of those things can change the value of the hay once it's in the bag. So you don't want to take your sample and then leave it on the dashboard for 2 months because that sample is not going to be representative after 2 months of having that heat and sun exposure and potentially moisture exposure as well. So make sure to correctly label the forage variety and submit to the lab as soon as possible. So those bags should have obviously the name of what is in it. So if it's alfalfa, and then from what field. So if you have multiple alfalfa fields, you're going to put, alfalfa north field on 200 East Corner, whatever it is, whatever address it is, the date that it was harvested. So if that's, July 1 or whatever it is, and then the date that it's sampled as well, because those are two things that, you want to know. It was harvested July 1st and sampled on September 1st. You kind of need to have that knowledge tied to the sample, because you may look back at it later when you're actually feeding it and forget when exactly that was harvested or sampled. And then have any type of identifier code or number for the lot on the bag. So especially if you're working with someone that sells a lot of hay, they should have some type of system to know, it was the second cutting of alfalfa off of the east field, and then still have those dates on there so they know which field it came off of to tie it back to. And I will show you one more video. Let me find it. Hopefully I can find it now. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is from our friends at Oregon State. And I thought it was a pretty good video on how to sample that.
Carmen, we don't have any sound, so I think you might need to reshare.
Okay, let me.
There's a little box in the corner of the window that pops up for sharing your screen that says share computer sound.
Is that working now?
Yep.
Hi. It's going to be important to take a representative sample of your hay bales in order to determine the nutritional value of your hay, and also determine whether or not there are any toxins in your hay. There's some critical steps that you'll need to know in order to take a representative sample of your hay bales. Let's go ahead and look at those. So it's important to find a unique lot of hay. So this is a uniform group of bales under the same irrigation, under the same seeding and fertilizing. The best time to sample your hay is as close to feeding as possible, or just before you sell your hay. In order to do this right, you're gonna have to have the right tools. What you're gonna need is a hay probe, and what that is gonna be at least 12-inch probe that can go into your hay bale. At one end, it's gonna have some sharp teeth that are gonna need to remain sharp, because that's gonna penetrate the bale and really produce the representative sample. The ideal length is anywhere between 12 inches and 18 inches. We have a probe here that's going to be able to do that. The diameter of the probe needs to be at least 3/4 of an inch wide, and that's going to ensure that we're going to get enough of the hay sample to submit to the laboratory. Now, it's going to be important to take a representative sample of the lot of hay. So how do you take a representative sample of your hay stack? What you're going to do is you're going to go to the flat side of the hay bale, and you're going to go down about 1/2 inch and place your hay probe in that middle of that flat side. And you're going to go in about 12 to 18 inches. And you have your core sample. You're going to go ahead and walk around that haystack randomly and take additional samples. Once you take the hay probe out of the hay bale, not only is it sharp, but after you've sampled your hay, it's going to be hot, so don't touch that. Now that you have your hay sample, go ahead and take that hay and put it into a bag that you've identified, specifically with a lot, your name, and also the date. Walk around your hay bales and continue to take core samples of your bales. You're going to go ahead and composite all those samples into your bag until you have about 1/2 pound. So now that you have your forage sample, it's going to be important to get it to a laboratory as soon as possible. At the end of the day, it's going to be important to the economic viability of your beef cattle operation. If you have any questions about the process, feel free to visit an extension office and visit with your field faculty member. Until next time on Oregon's Outback.
Okay, are you guys hearing me again?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, that's a good video. I've used that video a couple times to explain some things to people more visually, but just a couple of things before I'm finished are a couple of things to make sure you're doing everything accurately. Obviously, never send in flakes or grab samples. I've certainly had those brought to my office, and I've had to kind of re-educate and explain to them that that is not a representative sample of a lot of hay. So I think that's an important conversation to have with our producers. Do not use a core with an angled tip. Again, like I said, some studies have shown that those push aside some components of hay, providing a non-representative sample. So it's really important to have that flat angle on the tip. Too small or too large of a tip also doesn't adequately represent that leaf to stem ratio. So it's important to use something that has a 3/8 to 3/4 inch opening. And I think that website I showed earlier, they have a great list of different probes that you can choose from that are all within that range and recommended for use for this. Do not be biased when selecting bales to sample, so make sure not to select for only the perfect bales or avoid those moldy, musty bales because they are all part of the stack of hay, the lot of hay, and they are all going to be what is fed. So if it's something that's going to be fed, it needs to be included in your representative sample. So I think I'll just end that there. And if there's any questions, I can obviously stay on and answer any questions.
Carmen, what do you mean by an angled tip?
Hold on one second, I gotta turn up my volume. Say that again.
What do you mean by an angled tip?
So some of the tips, they will have like an angle to get it into the bale easier. So I don't know how to explain that other than like most of them should have it here. Let me go back to the picture.
So you're talking about a beveled point then, as
Yes.
opposed to a flat across point. So the drill he was using in the video was not an angled tip, it was flat across the front of it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I
Yep.
understand now.
So this is they should have a flat end. And some of them kind of have like teeth almost, and it's really important. I've kind of stopped getting the ones with teeth because you have to sharpen those pretty frequently for them to work like they should. So I kind of like the solid, smooth end, and you still have to sharpen that, but it's not as hard to sharpen because they don't have the teeth. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'll look at the chat. Oh. Arts manufacturing. Is that someone that does the teeth read? Is that what that's for?
Yeah, I'm gonna send the data for that. I got it. That's for the soil probe. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was just thinking how much I'm enjoying this instrumentation workshop and thinking that maybe there would be, I need to have some kind of ad in our local media advertising what we can do for you. Maybe some of you already do that, but it's always a challenge to get the word out that we have these things. And I saw somebody ask something, so I'll turn off my sound.
I can read the questions if that's helpful. Stephen asked, what do you think about overheating the sample with a drill probe?
That's a good question. I haven't used the drill probes, so I don't really experience that overheating. I think if it was severe enough that it would cause a change to the sample, that I would get a different probe because I'd be also worried that you're heating the bale. And I'd be a little worried about any risk to your haystack if that were that hot. So I don't know, does anybody else have experience with that?
Yes, Carmen, this is Reed. I went to a seminar in Reno that was actually on this and you need to be really careful of the type of soil probes you get. There's big differences between the amount of heat that they produce, and if you get some that heat up quite a bit and they're hot to the touch, that does degrade the sample and the proteins when you go to get your ultimate analysis done. So it does, for certain probes, make a big difference. And there are some of the hay buyers don't even allow you to use certain probes because of that factor.
Yeah, I would wonder, I wonder if that's where that list came from with the recommended ones, is that they don't cause as much of that heat.
I think that is part of it for sure, because that's actually a big deal. If your probe is heating up to where you can't touch it, you're not getting good samples.
Yeah.
Oil and proteins and stuff.
Yeah.
The next question that we have is about what are suggestions for the best way to sharpen?
I have had, let me think. I've only had mine sharpened once in the 5 years I've been in my office, and I can't even explain it because I just had someone offer to do it, and I went out to his shop and he used I don't even know what it's called. Maybe Reed knows a little more about that because I can't think of many. I've only ever had mine sharpened once.
Yeah, so the ones with the teeth and stuff like that on them, I mean, you can use a little file to sharpen them, and I've sharpened them with a file. But honestly, for most extension educators, the amount of times they use their probe, just chuck the old one and buy a new one. You can just usually screw them into the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just had a gentleman that had borrowed it, and he asked if he could sharpen it, and I said yeah, but I wanted to see it done, and so he had a file kind of and filed it, but he didn't do a lot. I mean, I don't think he did much to it, I guess is what I would say. It was a little bit easier to push after that, but it wasn't that hard before. And he just had like almost like a metal file. So, but I don't get the ones with the teeth because I don't want to have to sharpen them. So that's why I get the flat, the smoother opening, I guess I would say.
I don't see any other questions that have been typed into the chat. So of course, if anyone wants to unmute and jump in.
There is a comment that David Callister made, a note that higher moisture hay will heat the probe more than dry hay. And just that thought of potentially causing a hay fire is a very good point, a very good precaution. So Mackenzie, do you think it's possible that we can make some spot perhaps on the Cultivating Success website with our recording and our resources?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. That will be great because I've really enjoyed hearing from all of you and what you do in your counties. It's really useful, and this has been a fantastic opportunity to help everybody out. So thanks again, Ariel, for the great idea and for all the response. It was interesting because there was need for all 6 of these. So they were good choices that people jumped in with. Ken and Iris, Jen, Carmen, myself, Ariel, and it's actually pretty well distributed in terms of who wanted what. And like I said, Carmen and I will keep looking at the budget, but I also want to make another plug about SARE. It's been so unusual. Normally, we use the mini grants that we have so much money each year as long as we keep up all our reporting and putting a decent grant on what we're going to do with the topic of sustainable ag and train the trainer. That's what the Idaho SARE money is allocated toward. So it should be a recurring budget, and they just changed to a 3-year process instead of 1 year. So we know we have good funding for the next 3 years. And typically, if you need to go to like to give a talk, as long as it's in sustainable ag, like if you want to go to the national meetings or another regional meeting, you've got some good idea and justification, and you're willing to do the reporting that we need to turn in for the money that's spent. We're pretty flexible in terms of these mini grants, and we like to get all that money out. So normally we do support, the vast majority of the funds go to help people go to their meetings. We try to spread it around. It's not usually anything like 100%, but some, depending on how many requests we get, we make it equitable. Because nobody's traveling, we all of a sudden had all these funds and we needed to spend them. So that's why we did the instrumentation workshop. But any other train the trainer type of program that is in the broad area of sustainable ag, please run it by Carmen or myself. And Barbara Petty has now decided that the SARE coordinator should be a rotating position. So I will be rotating out this spring. And if you're interested in this position, there's a pretty big learning curve, but since we're going to be overlapping 2 years, it's a 4-year position and you overlap 2 years with the next, it does help you just learn the ropes and remember to think about SARE whenever you're doing programming where you could use some financial help, or you want to just talk about all the different kinds of larger grants, the national grants. A lot of them are very small. That's what's unusual about the program. They can be producer-led or a small team of producer-led with a professional like yourself in charge. So those are fairly small, and then some other larger ones. So don't hesitate to holler if you've got an idea or question, and probably the best place to get your questions answered is just to go to the Western SARE website. So it's westernsare.org, I believe. And then they have a huge grant database that can show what they've funded over the years, which is actually a really good resource, because like the White Rot Decline trial that I'm doing, there was another one done in northeastern Maine on a small organic farm, and that has helped inform me about the one I'm doing now. Oh, thank you, Mackenzie. She jumped in with the link. So Carmen, do you have anything to add?
Not necessarily, just our next state professional development grant will be starting here. Hopefully in the next month, we'll get those funds put into our account so we can start doing, we'll still kind of have some of the mini grants that we've traditionally offered. And then we'll also have what this 3-year professional development grant was for kind of a local meal kit training service. So we'll start providing trainings for local groups on how to assemble and kind of form any type of meal kit services to their community. So it'll be connecting community gardens, farmers markets, and kind of CSA is providing those type of people trainings on how they could start to promote and assemble a local meal kit. So if you are interested in that, definitely reach out to me and Kate. We're going to start planning those trainings here this spring. We're going to try and provide one to each region. And I've had a couple of local groups start calling and ask, because if you get on the SARE website, it's on there for Idaho. And I've had a couple local groups call and ask if we can come to their area to give the training. So we're going to have to make some plans there, especially with COVID, on any type of restrictions that might have. So we might also at least offer one of those online for other people to at least see virtually. So it'll be an exciting project.
That's fantastic. The topic of the 2021, that's I just had it extended, so it's going 1 more year. And one of the topics on that, besides, was doing an online farmers market add-on. So I've been doing a pilot project on that, if anybody's interested in that. And we've really kind of figured out a lot of the bugs and some open source software to and made a manual for how to do that if anybody's interested in that topic. All right, I will be in touch. We will be in touch with a follow-up survey. And I really hope that you can all participate in that. And remember, especially if you got an instrument, to think about remembering to do a head count and share that with me. You should have gotten an Excel spreadsheet that shows what all I have to report. So that's kind of what the requirement that goes with when you get SARE funds, is you have to help us with our annual reporting. Great. So I'm so glad. It was really fun to see all of you and hear what you're doing. And I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for participating. We'll be in touch. And this information will all be posted on a website. And a huge shout out to Mackenzie, Lawrence, and Colette, who had another obligation today. Just really, really working hard during this pandemic to do all this online programming and make it go smoothly. Everybody take care. Thanks again, Mackenzie, and we'll be in touch.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thanks.